From the misty Pacific coast to the rugged Cascade Mountains and beyond to the high desert in the east. Whether you chase black-tailed or mule deer, Roosevelts or Rockies, if you fish for bass or salmon, hunt cougars, bears, turkeys, or ducks, we want to talk about the most overlooked section of the outdoorsman community, true Pacific Northwest hunters and fishermen. You have found the podcast for you. Born in the wettest woods of the lower 48, where we only talk about the endless pursuits of the far western world to inspire you in your next adventure.
There will be many tags in our lives that go unfilled, but if your first objective is to learn and grow, you can find success in every season.
And I'd stand up and like, oh my God,
Your foot fell off.
it's off. Can't find it.
And ask the big questions about what truly motivates our life in the wild.
I believe that God gave us the ability to do this.
You go from plodding along and not really living to living the full, abundant life that He has for you now.
You are listening to the Oregon First Hunting and Fishing Podcast.
All right, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. I hope that today in this episode you will come away with some good tips, some great encouragement, and you'll be ready to go hit the water, maybe even on a kayak. More to come on that front. I don't really have any announcements for us today. Normally, we'll invite you to some sort of hunting or fishing event or even a shooting event. But this time I'm just going to say, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook. We have a group called Salem First Hunting and Fishing Club, and that's really where we get to interact with people. So if you are interested in joining us for a fishing trip or a hunting trip, make sure to go join that group, Salem First Hunting and Fishing Club, and we'd love to connect with you. You can stay up to date about what we're doing there. So in this episode, we are going to talk about kayak fishing. We also have a little bit of local hunting and fishing news and a great conversation with our guest, Willamette Valley local and obsessed bass fisherman, Kyle. How do you pronounce your last name?
Duever.
That's how I've been pronouncing it in my head.
It's a good guess.
But I was, it has an extra E in there.
It's a little weird. Yeah.
Could have been like a French word or of some sort.
German. Yeah.
German.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Kyle grew up in the Corvallis area, and he said he used to fish a lot when he was a kid, kind of took a break, but now that he's a man, he has been getting back into it, hitting it hard. He came with us on our fishing trip, and it was just really great to get to know him, talk to him. He even came early and did the work day with us, so put in the work to go fishing at that pond, and he slayed the bass. What was the biggest bass you caught after we were all done?
5 pounds, 8 ounces.
Yeah, which, I love to bass fish. I'm not very good at it, but I don't think I've caught a fish over 4 pounds in years, so.
We can fix that.
Yeah? All right, let's get after it. Let's do it. So, Kyle, let's start with some icebreakers.
Yeah.
You ready?
Hit me.
All right. Fishing or hunting?
Fishing.
Bass or salmon?
Bass.
Largemouth or smallmouth?
Ooh, I'll go largemouth just because I like
Largemouth?
swamps.
You like, okay. But in the river, you're obviously going to get more smallmouth.
Oh, they're fun, yeah. For sure.
All right. Pond or river?
Pond.
Pond? Okay. And spring or fall for bass?
Ooh, I'm going to go spring. Bigger fish.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I remember last year, I was deer hunting and having a really bad time not finding any deer. And I was just watching people catch the biggest smallmouth in the rivers.
Yeah.
Like, it was a good fall last year for that. Awesome. Well, now you guys know Kyle a little bit. Hope you're excited to get to listen to his experience with kayak fishing and bass fishing in general. But let's talk about our month in the outdoors. It's spring, and there's always a lot to do in spring. We're shaking off the rust from winter, and I'm excited because turkey season has begun. And, I went out one time so far on the second day of season, but I've got a bunch of trips planned. And actually, me and a buddy, we're going to go down to Southern Oregon, and we're going to record a couple of podcasts with the guys from Devoted Outdoors and the guys from the Life Outdoors. But we're going to be camping on BLM land and turkey hunting the whole time. So that's going to be a fun road trip. We're going to make it all the way down to Medford by the end of it. So,
that sounds fun.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. But yeah, turkey season is here. Get after it. It's a ton of fun. And also had a really fun time at the OFHF, Oregon First Hunting and Fishing trip, and we already kind of mentioned that, but lots of fish caught, gave away some prizes, and Kyle, being so generous, gave away his first place prize to someone else.
You know, it just seemed like he could use it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He looked like a little poor boy, huh?
Well, he needed to work on his tackle box, I think, a little bit. So,
oh, yeah. He pulled out some rooster tails that he said were from his grandpa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure they work. Don't get me wrong. But
Gage, we're not making fun of you. It's just kind of funny, you know, but maybe he'll use it to buy a new box too. But hey, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yeah, if it works.
So that was fun. The other thing I did that was kind of weird, someone abandoned these geese on the river, these big old white Chinese geese. So me and Gage went out there on our kayaks and caught them. And it was quite the adventure. If you're interested in that video, it's actually on YouTube. But we brought the geese to the pond that we fished at and got to reunite with them at that and see them. That was pretty fun, but you know, I don't think I'll have that experience again. I don't know how many people go catch abandoned geese in the river.
Yeah, it would be weird if you had a second round of that.
Okay. I mean, there is the one left out there that I've been watching, and I'm still seeing him almost every night. And I think I'll go get him, but I mean, that would still count as the same batch of dumped geese, you know? It'd be kind of weird.
Yeah, I guess that's same event-ish.
Yeah. The one thing I've always wanted to ask a game warden, and I've heard people debate it and never really give a straight answer, is does a domestic goose count toward your bag limit? Like if I went goose hunting on the river and shot some domestic bird that someone dumped, like I would shoot it knowing it's not a wild goose because they don't look anything alike, but I would shoot it to get a goose. Would it count toward my bag limit?
I have no frame of reference for that question whatsoever.
It's a philosophical mystery.
Yeah, it'd be fun to make the argument.
Do you even need the meat is the question. Kyle, how about you? What have you been up to lately?
I am just finishing up a school program for becoming an electrician. So that's 4 years long. I'm in the last 2 weeks of it. So that's awesome. A whole lot of time. But I mean, I also did get out and go fishing probably 4 times in the last week.
In the last 7 days?
Yeah.
Wow. So, I
mean not always dragging the yak out
of school, but I mean, that's...
You find time.
You know, most people who aren't going to school don't go fishing that much. So,
yeah.
Were you mostly morning fishing or evening?
Evening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After work or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hitting the ponds and...
Yeah, there's some little local places around my house within 5 minutes of my house that I can just sprint out to real fast and, you know, kind of know the good spots. And
that's good. Have you done as good as you did at the fishing trip?
Nothing like that. No, that place is special.
Yeah. We'll move on now to our look at the news. We've been talking about the process to hire a new ODF&W director for the last few episodes. And last time we talked about how the commission backtracked their expedited process and is slowing it down, but now they have been having a hard time finding anyone who wants to jump into the hornet's nest of Oregon outdoor politics. That's coming from the president of the OTA, Doug, who we had on last episode. And additionally, we're losing 3 seats on our wildlife commission. But before recording, I did contact the ODF&W directly and asked about the process so we can have the most updated information. And they sent me this news release that explained that the recruitment is being handled by the Oregon Department of Administrative Services and a private recruiting company, and a total of 23 applicants did meet the minimum requirement for the director position, and an interview screening panel of several commissioners and representatives from the governor's office are going to refine the list down to 2 to 4 final candidates on May 3rd, and then those final candidates will meet with Governor Kotek and some tribal representatives on May 9th to then be a part of a public Q&A at the commission meeting in Salem on May 10th. So a lot of dates there, but some key things is that May 9th is when the governor and the tribal representatives are going to meet with these final candidates, and then May 10th is when there'll be the public Q&A at the commission meeting. So if you're interested in talking with that, make sure you add that day to your calendar. Additionally, April 29th, coming up real quick, there's going to be an open public forum where members of the public can submit questions for the Q&A, and then the Q&A will be live streamed for anyone who doesn't want to drive all the way to Salem, which is nice. So I'll probably try to tune in there and see what's going on. But man, this really seems like a foot in the door for people to get someone in there who's not friendly to hunting and fishing, doesn't it?
Yeah, that would not be good.
On brighter news, the sea lion culls were approved on the Columbia, And this is great news for salmon because we have a gigantic population and an ever-growing population of sea lions that follow the fish further up the river than they ever have before. It's real interesting that the very first known sea lion up at Bonneville Dam was reported in 2003. So, about 20 years ago. Now we're to the point where sea lions live there and hunt there 11 months out of the year. So 11 months out of the year, they're there eating sturgeon, salmon, whatever they can get their hands on. And man, they put the hurt on the salmon. So this isn't a new thing, culling sea lions. In 2018, they were able to cull 100. They've been able to cull, a few more since then. But now they've really been given a bigger jurisdiction to take more sea lions than they have in the past. And the reason why, even though sea lions are protected by the Marine Mammal Protection Act, which is why there's so many of them, because we haven't been allowed to do anything of it, they realized that only 0.18% of the population, 0.18, caused these issues in the Columbia. So they're not going to allow us to kill all 0.18 that live in the river, but we could, and it would not harm the population of sea lions. The only thing it would do is help the endangered Chinook salmon. So here's a quote here from the website. Before sea lion management, data shows that sea lions were consuming up to 44% of the Columbia River Spring Chinook run and 25% of the Willamette Winter Steelhead run each year.
44%.
44% of the Spring Columbia Chinook salmon run.
That's ridiculous.
That is so much fish.
Yeah.
Fish that we don't have very many of anymore.
Yeah. And fish that everybody wants, let's be honest.
Hopefully these culls being approved will make a big difference. It sounds like the data shows it already has made a difference, and now we can take even more of them. And I saw some videos on the internet, pictures of the tribes have already started acting on those permissions.
Good.
And getting some of them out of there. So yeah, good stuff, cool stuff. Let's get into our conversation with Kyle Duever.
Let's do it.
All right, Kyle. Well, we always like to ask every guest this question.
Yeah.
Could you please share with us your favorite hunting or fishing experience?
Well, I think I'm going to have to go with favorite recent, because otherwise that's just a big category.
It's hard to pick the top one, yeah.
No, for this year, it would probably be, I have a rancher friend that I help out with some stuff, and he lets me fish his ranch pond. Ooh. So I went out there the day after Christmas, and I was trying different stuff, trying to figure out where they were at, and I saw one chase. I had a 6-inch glide bait out.
Wow.
I saw him chase it, see the kayak, turn around and go the other way.
Huh.
And didn't catch anything nearly as big as that was that day, but I went back like a month later, was fishing a 6-inch a Berkeley cool shad in perch, and just dropped it off a little ledge, little tick on the line, swung on it, and man, pulled in a 7-pound 2-ounce largemouth, and it towed me all over the place, man.
Really?
It was great.
That's cool.
Yeah,
man. Do you think it was the same fish?
I don't. No, I think this one was bigger than the one I saw.
That's just a good pond you got there.
Yeah, it's never crowded, because it's one of those families that they see you drive up and they don't know you're getting greeted with a shotgun, So
wow,
I love that place.
That's cool, man. So 7.5 pounds, and could you describe a glide bait?
So glide bait is generally something that's jointed. It's a hard bait, usually about 2 treble hooks hanging underneath it. And you generally fish it pretty slow. It's made to kind of wind and drop in the water and just kind of twitch from side to side.
Oh, okay.
And you generally want to get that action going with your reel retrieve and not with the tip of your rod.
Oh, really?
To
keep the line tight?
Yeah, and you're just going to overact it. Because generally if you're slinging something that's 3 ounces on a bait, you're using a big old stick of a rod. So something that's 7-8 feet long, you twitch the tip of it, you're moving that bait a couple feet.
Wow.
So
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So then, and describe the bait that you caught it on.
So it was a 6-inch swim bait as well.
Okay.
But it was a soft bait. Berkeley has, it's called the Coal Shad, and it is kind of it has one treble hook kind of tucked up under the bottom of it, clipped in, that can swing
Clipped
free.
in.
It clips into the bottom of the bait, and then if it hooks into something, it'll actually pop out of the bottom, so that it's not, so that the bait has less of a chance of throwing the hook because it's not as attached to it. They're neat. I've had great luck with them this spring.
And so is that something that you normally go to in cold weather, is those big, slow baits?
I do now. That's kind of something I've developed over this last year. I put a lot more time in fishing those and knowing when to fish them and where to fish them.
Okay.
I love them. You're not going to get as many bites, but actually, you know what? This time of year, I've got to say, I've gone and looked on my graph and said, there's got to be fish there. Throw a drop shot, throw a weightless worm. They don't care. Throw a 6-inch swim bait and I get hit.
Wow.
So
do you think part of that's because no one else is really doing that? Like, I don't even own a bait that big, you know?
You know, I honestly think that, especially in the cold water, when you get a fish that decides it's time for them to eat, they want to make it count.
Oh,
and they're a lot of times pretty bait oriented, so that they're looking for something swimming to eat.
Yeah.
And I think it just kind of, you know, when a siren goes by, dogs' instinct kick in, they have to howl.
Yeah.
I think sometimes seeing what looks like an injured fish that's going to be a good meal comes by, it just kicks off an instinct for them. I got to kill it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so essentially with that one, you're not just like throwing that blind. Like you know the spots where the bass are hanging out and you're trying to get them right in front of them.
Yeah, so you're gonna generally fish those in ambush spots, right? So you're gonna throw it along a grass edge where there's bass hiding in the grass, or in a drop off where they see it flutter over the edge of that and they just come up and crush it because they think it can't see me.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, you look for those. And then bite windows are a real thing, you know. Lunar feeding times, they're a real thing for baits like that.
Oh, so you subscribe to the astrology of fishing?
Oh,
huh?
I wouldn't go that far. No. Major feeding times with moon positioning, I can tell you're so much more likely to get a bite on a big bait like that in that window than you are.
Well, and this is coming from a guy who thinks that he's not fishing much to spend 4 days a week out on the water. So, I mean,
everybody has addictions, man.
At least this one's pretty healthy.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Expensive, but healthy.
I mean, even at the fishing event, right?
Yeah.
You remember me telling you, hey, can I stick around for an extra couple hours because the major bite window's coming up?
Yep.
That's when I caught that 5.5 pounder.
Yeah, that's right.
So
it was like 6:15 or something.
Right about then. Yeah.
Yep. Man, and I mean, you were catching fish throughout the day, but yeah, that big one.
And the bite, I caught about 3 4 to 5 pounders right around then.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. It was not just one. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's some good ones came around
so
then.
that's why you want to pay to fish there.
Yeah. Yeah, those fish fight hard.
They do?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Like harder than, really? Huh.
They're some of the hardest fighting bass. I think they've got thick shoulders. They pulled 2 of my rods. They bent them straight under the kayak.
Wow.
So.
And the one you caught, that one, the fishing trip for our club trip, that one knew to dig itself in the weeds. And,
yeah, that one was mean.
Yeah. Yeah, and that one was 4.2.
Yeah,
so,
4 1/4. Yeah.
I mean, like, I can't imagine the 5.5 pound bass,
I had heavier line and a heavier rod too.
Oh, okay.
So
you knew
that
it was
one was
coming.
on a 6-inch swim bait. So
it was.
Yep.
Okay. So man, yeah, you really got that nailed down. And I mean, it's the kind of knowledge that comes from just doing it so much too.
You got to put hours into it. There's no other way.
And are you the kind of guy that spends like a lot of time watching YouTube videos or listening to podcasts or anything like that?
I do have a few YouTube subscriptions that
sure.
I'm fairly religious about. For sure.
That probably helps too, getting multiple perspectives there and learning
just
stuff.
soaking up knowledge wherever you can get it. You know?
Sweet. Cool. Well, that's great. 7.5 pounder in January. Man, I don't think I've ever caught a bass outside of spring or summer. I can't
most
even
people
imagine.
Don't.
Yeah.
I honestly, winter bass fishing is almost more rewarding for me because they're still eating, just not as often. You're not going to get as many bites when you have to break down where they're going to be. But if you can figure out where they are and what they want in the winter, I swear it's more rewarding.
So we had Jamie Mack on the show a little bit ago, and from Discount Tackle, and I think it was him who was telling us about his a bass a month challenge that he did, 1 bass a month for a whole year.
Yep.
At least 1 bass. Obviously, he's catching more than that.
Yep.
But man, those winter months, dude.
So the last 2 years, I've done that same challenge, but in one pond.
And you've successfully done it?
Yep.
Wow. Man, in one pond.
In one pond.
Wow. Dude, you just fish your brains out, don't you?
Well, I like fish more than people generally, so, you know.
I'm sure the fish would not say the same about you.
They don't like me as much.
Fish fear you. Yeah. You know, you told me you moved out to Corvallis when you were about 10, right? Yep. So what was it like growing up in the valley for you?
It was good. I mean, let's be honest, this valley is beautiful. Like I spent 4 months in New Zealand, which is gorgeous. I've been up in British Columbia for a semester. You know, I've lived some places that are pretty stunning, and man, the Willamette Valley is just, it's up there with them. Yeah. You know, it's a beautiful place. I love Oregon. Mm-hmm. I love the temperature swing, you know, I mean, I love the grass. Like, it's a beautiful place. It's a good place to be.
Yeah, I agree. And I also love like it's the trope that everyone says, but it's so true. Like, you can go to the beach and you can go snowboarding the same day.
Oh yeah,
you know,
easily.
I think it's pretty awesome. And I mean, in the valley itself, like, you don't need to leave the valley to do fun things. Like, there's, whether it's fishing, tons of fishing, duck hunting, you know, and any kind of hunting really. But it is cool to live in such a central area as well. But Oregon, I agree with you, man. It'd be hard to leave.
It would. I mean, you know, unless someone, you know, gave me 1,000 acres out in, you know, Wyoming or something like that. I mean, that might convince me, but
but it'd be so hard to leave the coast. That's the thing for me, because I've lived on the West Coast my whole life, and just the thought of being that far away from the ocean is hard.
Yeah, I get that. I lived on the coast for 10 years.
Oh, and, wow.
Just over Newport, Waldport area. And it is awesome over there.
I already mentioned how you fished a ton when you were a kid, but then you kind of grew out of it. But when did you get real serious about fishing again?
So when I started my new job, one of my coworkers said, "Hey, you want to go fishing?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, I haven't done that in forever." Sure. And, it's funny because at this point, like, he doesn't ever fish. It was just something to kind of maybe try and get to know me. Oh. And now this is all I talk about, and this is all that I do. Wow. And he just kind of rolls his eyes at me.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was in 2020. That kicked off again.
So you're about to to become a journeyman, finish your schooling. Yeah. So is that when you started that schooling?
Yep.
Your coworker accidentally took you fishing.
Just randomly.
And ruined you.
Yeah. And honestly, I think he didn't even care about fishing. He just had a rooster tail and wanted to get his boat on the water. You know,
really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he has a boat, huh?
It's a little boat.
Oh, okay.
It's about the size of my kayak, if we're honest.
Oh, yeah. So it's kind of like my boat then, probably. My John boat. Yeah. No, that's awesome. So let that be known to anyone listening. You never know who you're going to ruin when you invite them fishing or hunting one time.
Yeah, you're going to take away all their extra money.
Yep. I mean, you said you got serious, you got the bug, you fell in love with it. Yeah. But, like, when did you get good at fishing? Because, dude, you were out there, you were schooling us. Like, I thought you'd been fishing every day for your whole life, you know? Like, you have knowledge and skill. Like, when did you become good at fishing?
I mean, truthfully, like, I would say that I'm not yet. I would say I'm learning, I'm gaining knowledge, and I'm better than I used to be.
Everyone says that.
There's so much that I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I will say about 2 years in, I was more able to call my shots, and I knew why they were happening.
Got it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, it's about hours on the water, hours with a rod, you know?
Yeah.
You don't learn the patterns unless you fish the patterns.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. You're kind of touching on something that I think is really funny that I've noticed is you can, when you start off a new thing, let's just say a hobby, let's say fishing. If you imagine a line graph, right? Mm-hmm. And you have the up and down axis, right? Axis. Yeah. That's your confidence. Mm-hmm. And you start off with like the highest confidence in the world, you know, after you've gone fishing like once or twice, you're like, oh, Yeah, I know everything. Even if you've been fishing for like 1 year, you're like, oh, I know everything. I got it all. And then the other access on the bottom, the horizontal, is knowledge of the subject.
Yeah.
And you have this high confidence but little knowledge. Then you gain more knowledge and it just drops off your confidence, and you suddenly are overwhelmed by everything there is to know. You hear all these guys, you know, who have been doing it for 50 years, and they say terms
Speaking
and they
a
throw
different
stuff out there, and you're like, I didn't know there was this much to know. But then, like, as your knowledge grows, the confidence level slowly comes back up, but it never like reaches the height it was, right? And I see that in so many different pursuits, you know, but it sounds like you're explaining that with fishing.
Yeah, I think that's pretty universal.
Yeah.
I mean, when you know nothing about something, you can feel great about it if you have a good day.
Yeah.
And as soon as you start to have a couple bad days and,
then you're
and
like,
see that there's people that aren't catching anything out here that know way more than I do. And, But yeah, no, spot on.
You on the bell curve of confidence versus knowledge. I mean, you definitely have more than just the knowledge, but even the practice. And man, I think that's coming from you getting yourself out there like every chance you get, just spending a ton of time on the water, learning it. It eventually for you evolved to the point where you make your own baits.
I do.
And most people do not take that step.
No.
So I'd like to hear about that. When did you start making your own baits? Where did that come from?
So that was just a little over a year ago, truthfully.
Okay.
I used to get custom stuff made by a guy that's down in Roseburg, I think, Little Dave. Little Dave's Baits. He does open pour swim baits exclusively now, but he did all the stuff back then.
Yeah.
And I would ask him, hey, can you make a special bait that has this color and this color and this kind of flake and this kind of flake and, you know, like that kind of thing. And he'd work with me, and he was great.
Man.
But he decided to get out of the injection molding. And we had one little swim bait that I love because on the Willamette it just destroys everything. And he's like, hey, I'm selling this mold. Do you want me to make you a big old batch of these before it's gone? I know you love them. he reached out to me, by the way. This is like, yeah.
And wow. So you were one of his main customers.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but I definitely supported the man.
Got it.
But I kind of just stopped and said, well, how much is the mold? And then we had a conversation about what it takes to make your own baits. And I kind of drank the Kool-Aid and, you know, went and got all my CNC machine molds and injectors and started, you know, and I am not a great bait maker by any means, but at the same time, it's a point of pride at this point that when I go fishing, I don't take baits I don't make if they're soft plastic.
Really?
Yeah.
At all?
Every once in a while, I have a few that I still haven't gotten that mold yet. I have a couple holdovers from Little Dave that I still love, but generally, I only take what I make.
You make your own like creature baits, crawdads. Do you do lizards?
I don't have a lizard mold yet.
Okay,
it's on the list.
Do you fish lizards?
You know, that's what I haven't much. But I've heard a lot of good things, and I've actually been looking at them more because they're so good in cold water because they have such good movement at slow speed. You don't have to rip them to get a lot of movement out of them. So
I had one day where I slayed smallmouth on a salamander, soft plastic Texas rig, and I've never been able to replicate it.
Really?
Really? I don't know what was going on.
Just what they wanted that day.
And I don't know, but caught a bunch of them, and then but anyway, so you're now. I don't even know where you would get started with that. Obviously, you got a mold. That's a start. But then, like, what's like a overview 5 steps? What's your raw material?
So it's plastisol, right? It's a
and you buy
liquid plastic.
You buy that bulk?
Yeah, either 1 gallon or 5 gallon tubs. And they have different hardnesses of it too. Yeah. Okay. So it has resin in it that's heat activated. Okay. So you heat it up. Generally it's in a microwave in a Pyrex dish.
Oh. Did you buy a special microwave or
yes, because it makes your microwave poison. Oh, you don't want to do food in that after. Okay. But yeah, once it gets
up, the microwave live in the garage or something.
I might have built a full work desk with a ventilator in my furnace room. Yeah,
sweet.
It gets up to temperature. Once it hits 350 degrees, it activates the resin. Blah blah blah.
It becomes liquid.
It becomes kind of very hot.
Well, you said
gelatinous.
It comes liquid.
Yeah, it comes in a bucket.
So it becomes even more thin. Like, what's the point of heating it up?
It activates the resin. So that's what hardens it once it cools. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Because when it goes back to temperature, it's not going to be liquid ever
It will
again.
never be liquid again unless it's 350 degrees.
Wow. So I've heard of people like recycling soft baits.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I've done it.
Is there a way to reheat it then?
Just crush it up as fine as you can.
Okay.
Put it back in the microwave. Stir it every once in a while until it's liquid.
Oh, all right. And then it rehardens fine.
Yep.
Is it lower quality probably?
You're going to have more imperfections, you know? I mean, unless you do a really thorough job of cleaning your plastic.
Well, but how perfect does it have to be? Because, I mean, half the baits we use don't look like anything real.
You know, and that's kind of one of the things is like, there's people who get into just nerd mode on their plastics, you know, like they have to be works of art. That's great. Sure. I love that. It's super fun. But the fish don't care that much.
Sure. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I mean, there's some guidelines you probably want to follow, you know, don't do this. It's going to affect the bait, but realistically,
is it what's more important, the color or the texture?
Yes.
Okay. Because obviously they're not going to go after it if it's a stupid
If it doesn't
color.
have any action, you know, if it's too hard of a plastic and say you have a wacky style stick bait, if it's not doing that little shake and shimmy as it falls, there's no point.
Yeah.
You know, that action is the point of that rig. But at the same time, you know, if you only do chartreuse, it'll work sometimes, but not most of the time.
And you brought me some stickworms here.
I did. I brought a couple.
What would the color be called of these?
I haven't really landed on anything. It's a green pumpkin base with some large or medium black fleck in it. Yeah. Some small copper and some small purple.
Okay.
And I found that as the water temperature is not quite high, but it's fairly clear, that color has been working really well for me this year.
This has some great action to it. So the thing I'm worried is you probably go through the softer ones more.
Yeah, you
off
will.
The hook.
Yeah.
But then the action's worth it, right? Yeah.
It doesn't matter how long it lasts if it doesn't get bit.
And you're not selling. You're just
personal use. As soon as it's a business, it's...
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, it changes the dynamic of it.
That's life. That's an important lesson.
Yeah. I make baits for myself and my friends. That's about it.
I do love the feeling of it. Feels... Because like a lot of times you buy a stickworm, they're the tougher rubber. This is like a really soft, floppy stickworm. I like it. I'm excited to catch some bass on it. You'll have to
send me a picture of whatever you get on it.
Yeah, you'll be with me.
Okay.
Sweet. You started making your own baits about a year ago, but you said it was around 2020 that you started kayak fishing, or at least when you were in the market for a kayak at one point. What kick-started that?
So I had actually really enjoyed kayaking before that, but I did kind of more like, I don't know, the long 17-foot, like take it out in the bay type kayaks. I love just, you know, going on
like surf
going
launch
up
kayak?
the LC, that kind of thing. Nothing crazy, but you know, but yeah, when I started fishing again, it was just kind of like I can't get to the places that I know I want to fish, you know?
Yep.
And I'm real lazy and I don't want to work on a boat. So, you know,
and you don't want to work to save up enough money for a boat.
Here's the thing. I have a boat and I hate
you do?
I hate it.
You have a boat. I didn't know that about you. Okay.
I have a flat bottom with a jet. Yeah.
Wow. How many feet?
16.
Aluminum?
Yep.
Is it got a center console cockpit?
Yes, it does.
Man. All right. Well, I know when we do our duck hunt next year, that you're going to be one of the boaters.
I'm hoping to have it sold by then. So.
Okay. You already had a boat, but you decided to start kayak fishing because it's easier than hauling a boat around.
No, I've just bought 4 watercraft in the last 4 years. I
so
have
you
a disease.
Have a problem.
I do. I have a problem. I have a problem.
So what were the perks though? What made you want to do it?
I just really enjoy the peace and quiet of being out on the water. I mean, being on the bank is great. Don't get me wrong. And sometimes it's just the right thing, but there's nothing like sitting out in the middle of flat water and just letting it overtake you.
Yeah.
You know, just being in the quiet, sitting in it. And that's, I think the dynamic on a kayak is just kind of special, truthfully.
One thing that I noticed, and I think that this is true, that maybe 5 years ago, kayak fishing really experienced a huge surge because it's a very, it was a very cheap, but it's not anymore. You can make it cheap, but you know, it's more of just an obtainable way to get on the water. And it's really evolved into this acknowledged by the fishing industry and legitimate method of fishing with its own tournaments, clubs, brands, websites. Like there's a whole industry around it now.
Absolutely.
You know, and so I guess the question I wanted to ask is, let's say someone wants to get into kayak fishing.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the best place to start? And I'd like you to think of this in two ways.
Yeah.
What's the cheapest way to get started? And then what's like the most bougie way to get started?
Yeah. So, I mean, realistically, I'm going to say if you're just getting started into kayak fishing, you're probably not going to, have bait casters and, some of the fancy rigs. I mean, you get yourself a good old, an ugly stick, something like that, is almost unbreakable. You're going to be able to learn.
I love my ugly stick. What are you saying
about
about
ugly
ugly
sticks? I have 3 of them,
sticks?
man. I'm just saying they're not really purpose built. They're the Swiss Army knife,
Yeah. Which is why I have.
And they're impossible to break. They're great.
Yeah.
But, get something like that. Get a cheap sit on top kayak. I do think sit on top is better than sit in for fishing.
Really?
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%.
Okay. And does that matter, like the size of person?
You know what? It can, if you get some of the cheaper, narrower sit on tops. Yeah, your stability is going to be a little less.
Yeah.
But any of the purpose built fishing kayaks, man, they're
stable.
They're so stable that most of them have dual or tri hull, and they're tanks.
Yeah. So, just to not gloss over it, the sit on top, that's the one you see where it has a chair.
Generally,
and it's more of a platform, right? That you're sitting on top of a platform, as opposed to like the cheap sit inside that I have. My kayak's a hollow hole, and I sit in the hole. Do they make fishing kayaks that are like that, sit inside?
They have some that have like the rear rod holders, that you can use for fishing.
They're more multi-purpose.
They're more multi-purpose,
Okay.
and it's hard to store and access tackle while you're active.
That's my biggest problem, dude.
Yeah.
And I hunt out of mine. I fish out of mine. It's bright orange.
Yeah.
It's less than 10 feet long. It's just totally... I've been wanting to upgrade for a while.
Yeah.
What's like the best lengths? There's got to be a time where it's too long, but is it possible for it to be too short? Do you want the shortest yak you can get?
Well, not necessarily. So the things you got to look at when your yak is shorter, it will be lighter generally. It's also not going to track as well. It's going to have a lower top speed. It's going to push water more a little bit because it doesn't have that streamlined length.
Got it.
To take up that.
Will it
that
also
draw.
less water displacement? It won't probably be able to hold as much weight.
It kind of depends on hull design.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure at some of the upper levels of kayaks, like mine is 10.5 feet, and it has the same weight capacity as the 12.5 foot.
Okay.
So I don't really know on that one. I'm sure it impacts it.
Yeah.
But
so here's a question. Looking at length and width. Let's talk about a short and a wide kayak versus a long and a narrow one.
Okay.
Someone who fishes the Willamette River and jumps from slough to slough, are they going to do better on a short wide or a narrow long?
Okay, so I'm going to say part of that depends on the propulsion type.
Paddling.
Getting to the place. Yeah, if you're pedal versus paddle versus, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you can't forget about pedal. It's a game changer.
Yeah, okay.
Your short, wide kayak is going to be one that you probably are going to be able to stand up in and stretch. So, that width is important for that. But it's also not going to track as well. So you're going to have to work harder to keep it on track.
Got it.
I would be hesitant getting an overly narrow fishing kayak just because it's counterproductive to what you want to fish out of. If it's just like exploring, adventuring, they're great. They're slick. They move faster. You're going to work less to get it where you want it. But once you get there, you're going to be a lot more scared.
Yeah. Well, and there probably aren't very many narrow hunt or fishing kayaks on the market, are there?
I mean, it's
at this point, there's probably everything on the market.
Oh, there's probably everything on the market.
Okay.
And I'm going to say it's kind of relative too. So a narrow fishing kayak is a wide kayak for anything else. So.
Yeah. And so looking at propulsion, we always start on cheap paddle kayaks, and then the next step up is pedaling.
Pedal drive.
So how does that work?
So there's a couple different drive systems. What I run a native Titan, and I have basically like a bicycle.
Yeah, I saw your bicycle pedals. Yeah,
and it has a little propeller underneath, so I can go forward, backwards with that.
It has like a regular propeller.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
That's cool.
I like it.
And does the whole thing steer? Is that how you steer with your pedals?
No, so on my left hand, I have a rudder system.
You have a rudder?
I have a rudder in the back that I can steer with my left hand while I'm pedaling.
Okay.
So
does it still good in current?
It does all right.
Okay.
I mean, you got to put a little more forethought into current, but yeah, it absolutely still, so long as you're pushing water past the rudder, it'll still do it.
And just this week, you threw on the probably the best option, right? Or at least subjectively the best option.
I wouldn't say the best. I would say, to use your term,
option?
The most bougie for sure.
Oh, the most. Okay,
yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
all right. I like it.
No, I put an a Newport Motors NK 180, 1.8 horsepower electric motor with steering on the back of my kayak.
Okay, so how is it controlled?
So I have a throttle right in front of my rudder steering on the left side. Has forward, reverse. It gives me a readout of the status of my battery.
Wow.
What percentage I'm using, what the wattage is at this speed.
It's bougie.
Yeah, it's nice.
Bougie.
It's good. It's good.
But then the steering, how do you control the steering with it?
So and I reached out to a guy who is a native rep. He's the kayak shop up in Portland that I am blanking the name of right now. He knows everything, and he suggested one for me. It's a Tim Percy universal, and it mounts to the track on my kayak.
Oh, sweet.
And it actually has a wire through line that clips onto the harness of the actual motor and turns the motor.
Oh, nice.
Because my rudder wouldn't handle the torque that the motor is putting on it.
So when you're using your motor, does the rudder, do you just kind of
leave it straight?
Just
tracks.
It just kind of hangs out.
Yep.
And then could you try to use it if you really wanted to turn sharp?
You know what? I don't think you'll have to, because I turn that steering on that electric motor and I crank it up to 50-60% and that thing turns on a dime.
Oh yeah.
It does good.
Yeah. Yeah. Just careful you don't turn too sharp and throw yourself out of it.
Yeah.
I almost did that. I was duck hunting and I was trying to get a wounded bufflehead with my net, and I accidentally pushed my tiller handle perpendicular to the boat, and then
change center of gravity just a little bit on you.
I almost took in water. It was close, and I need to get one of those lanyard turn off things, because it's an old motor. It doesn't have that. But that was a close one. So don't do that with your yak.
And you know what? The Newport comes with one of those lanyards. If that magnetic thing's not on it, it won't run.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that's nice, because
that's the way it should be.
You can't swim faster than your motor.
No. Nope.
Yep. You don't want it to end up halfway across a big old lake. Something you said stuck out to me when you were telling that story of that big bass you caught this winter, is it saw the kayak. Or not the one you caught, but the one in December. Saw the kayak and turned around. Does that mean that kayak color matters?
I don't know that I have enough data to say one way or the other. I can say that I would probably avoid a super bright kayak, but the fact of the matter is it's going to be a silhouette to them no matter what color it is. You know, the sun's on the other side of it.
Yeah.
You know, so they're going to notice it if they're close enough, regardless of color.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it matters or not.
And a big fish is going to equate that to a fisherman.
Well, the bigger the fish, the longer they've been around, the smarter they are.
The more they've been pierced.
Yeah.
Okay. So color so much for fish doesn't matter, because no matter what, they're going to see it, even if it's tan.
And
green.
Truthfully, honestly, like smallmouth have better eyesight than largemouth, right? Mm-hmm. Largemouth, regardless, either one of them is going to feel it first, right? So they're super sensitive to vibration. So anytime you clack something down on your deck, it's going to send that wave through the water and they're going to hear it, right? So that's why a lot of these really, really high-end kayaks have that EVA foam padding all over it.
Yeah.
To deaden sound.
I want to put that on my John boat.
Yeah.
Yeah. This stuff's awesome.
That's neat stuff.
They also make cheap knockoff versions of it on Amazon.
I'm sure they do.
So, does your kayak have that?
It has not enough.
Oh, okay.
Little bits. But I also have an old kayak. It's from 2018. So it's been around for 6 years or so.
Wow. 2018 doesn't seem that long ago. Are there any more unchangeable features? Like you mentioned the rack system or the track. That's what you said.
Yeah.
So is that standard industry? Like, is there a track, or if you buy a certain brand kayak, do you have to buy their add-ons to work with their track?
Yeah, Hobie does that.
Okay.
They have, was it the A-Trail or something like that? I don't run a Hobie, so I'm not super familiar with it, but they have a different system. The gear track is pretty universal. There's a lot of mounts for it. Everybody makes stuff that mounts to it.
Oh, good.
So you're pretty safe with that.
I like it when stuff's universal like that.
It's nice, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay, so there, in most of them, there's a track. Does even your seat mount on the track?
Yes.
So like everything mounts on the track.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's, on my kayak in particular, there's tracks into the bottom, the floor of the boat, so I can slide it back and forth and then torque it down.
Got it.
But yeah, it's the same kind of mount.
So then, as far as seating goes, like any cheap kayak that doesn't have any tracks or anything, you just kind of sit in it, or maybe there's a little thin butt pad for you.
Yeah.
But is it pretty standard for fishing kayaks to have a separate seat? Because I've seen that a lot.
Yeah.
Or are there options for the built-in seat?
Yeah, there are a lot of people change seats out, and they go with something that's maybe a little more comfortable. The seat is definitely becoming a staple of a fishing kayak, partially because when you're out on them, a lot of times you're spending long days. I know I've spent 12 to 14 hours on that kayak.
Yeah, dude. Oh,
before,
man, that would kill on a cheap kayak.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing of it is you want to sit up a little higher so you can see better and cast easier. Your elbows aren't hitting the sides of your kayak if you're sitting down in it,
Yep.
all those
Makes
little,
a big difference.
Yeah, those issues. That elevated seat, it changes your perspective on everything.
So not every kayak has it, but it's definitely a feature to look for.
I love both of my kayaks that have the raised seat, and I wouldn't go back.
Let's talk about kayak accessories and add-ons, because man,
way too
there's
many.
so many. But I mean, I want to hear about the ones that you run and sort of their use. So I'm just gonna go down this list, and as we're talking, and we can kind of figure out rod holders.
I have them in the back on my tackle box so that I have 10 rod holders on my boat.
You looks like a mini ship of some sort.
I don't like making choices.
Mast, yeah.
So in that sense, yes. As far as the one up front to set your pole in while you're fishing, absolutely not.
Really?
Nope.
Okay. So, because you're not doing any bait fishing or anything.
Nope.
But it's really hard to stay in one spot with a kayak. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you wanted to go catfish fishing or carp fishing, like it's so hard to stay in one spot in a kayak.
Yeah. Well, the other side of it too, and this is just kind of a little bit of personal philosophy here. I primarily fish for bass. I only catch and release. I want them to leave in good shape. And if you just leave it sit out there, your chances of gut hooking if you're finesse fishing gets a lot higher if you don't notice they're there right away.
Yeah.
You know? Otherwise, I want to be attached to whatever input they're giving me so I know how to react myself. So if you just set that pole out and wait for it to move, I just don't see the value in it.
Yeah. Okay. That's rod holders, your storage rod holders, but not so much your actively fishing rod holders.
Yeah, for me.
For you. Every accessory that we say is going to have like some sort of track mounted option, pretty much.
The ones that I run mount to my Yak Attack Black Pack, which is where I keep my tackle, and they're made to be attached to that box, and then they have a built-in bungee so that if you flip over, it keeps your rod on.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that gets
Have you
spendy.
flipped over?
Not yet.
Not yet. Good way to put that. Good way to put that.
I'm sure it will happen someday, and I'm not looking forward to it. But
It's like when we were clearing the brush, and I said, "I'm glad it's not raining."
And it started raining?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Glad it's not raining yet. There you go. Much better. Cool. So then we've already talked about the motor, but what about your you can't call it a power pole because it's not a pole. It's not power pole.
But they do have those for kayaks.
They do?
Absolutely. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. They have it on a little remote, and it'll go down and tack you in.
Is it telescoping or something? How does it even fit?
No, it just sticks up like a rod.
Huh.
Yeah, and it'll drive it down to however long.
You probably can get like easily 10 feet, 15 feet, maybe even.
Ooh, I like maybe 8. I don't think I've seen any on kayaks higher than about 8.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
I mean, it's a shallow water anchor,
Yeah.
But
no matter what it is, right?
Yeah. But I have the poor man's version in my kayak.
Yeah. But it was still really helpful.
Oh, it's super effective. It's super great. And I just drive that by hand through the drainage holes in the bottom of my kayak. Usually I'll drag an anchor behind me a little bit and then send that down and get 2 points of holding.
So to describe that, if you have like your platform of your kayak it has these holes in it that you could see straight down into the water.
Scupper holes.
Yeah. And those water doesn't come up through them,
Depending on your deck.
Yeah.
It can, but.
But you have your pole that's specifically big enough to slip in, and it has a T on the top of it to prevent it from going all the way through the hole.
And it's also so you can push off of stuff.
Oh, so it's like a push-pull combined. It worked really well for you.
Yeah, it was
keeping
great.
you in one spot.
Yeah.
And so with that, you had your anchor deployed at the same time, though.
Yes.
So that's to give you the 2 points of contact, like you said. But your anchor had like a winch on it.
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's a lifesaver whenever it's windy in any way. It's just a little anchor wizard, just a little centrifugal clutch kind of thing,
Oh.
Release it, pops out, wind it up to the point that it starts getting tight, and it bites in and pulls your anchor up, and you just run.
Yeah.
They're great.
So is there anything like that system that you had to bolt into your kayak?
It all attaches to the track.
All right. So the track, you need the track. The track is the way to go.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good tip. I've seen people talk about having live wells even. Is that even how do you even accomplish that?
I actually built one
okay.
for a kayak, and then I realized I was never going to use it, so I took it apart. But yeah, I mean, it's just an aerator attached to a battery with a little control. It's not
just a container of water.
Basically,
pretty simple.
Yeah. They're really not used much in kayaks because kayak tournament fishing is a put it on your standardized measuring board, take a picture, and then release the
Goes
fish.
by inches rather than pounds.
Inches instead of pounds.
Okay.
So you're not
And you
bringing in
take
a bag.
pictures.
Yeah, you take pictures and
Is
then submit
there a
them.
way to prove that each picture is a different fish? How do they handle that?
They have independent judges that look through everything. You have to have location and timestamp on your photos, all that stuff.
Got it.
And I mean, to a degree, it's the honor system, but every pattern on every fish is a little different.
Yeah.
If you're really looking, you're gonna see.
Uh-huh.
The difference. So
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I'd be trying to like show off the scars or something to really make it look different.
Well, and the other thing is too, if you get caught cheating, you're never competing again.
Yeah.
It's one of those things they don't take that well.
Well, there's that whole scandal of those guys back east with the was
The
it a walleye?
Yeah.
We got weights and fish.
Oh man, that was hard to watch.
Man, that was a whole debacle. I heard those guys were getting into more trouble and stuff after that. But anyway, so live well, not really a point for that on a kayak.
Not much, no.
Yeah, at least for our fishing, because there are some people who take them, like if you're in Florida and you're using live bait for like in the ocean or something. I could see a live well being helpful for that, obviously. But
and if you do that, again, you can get a little bubbler, a little 12-volt battery, and you can build one for cheap. They're not hard to put together.
Just use a styrofoam ice chest and bungee cord it in.
Yeah. Honestly, I just used a little tote that I got at Sportsman's, and then like a little ammo can to house the battery and the controller.
Yeah.
And it was easy.
My buddy who had a fishing kayak, you know those crates that are plastic and how do I describe this? It's hard to explain.
Talking about the egg crate?
Maybe. I might not have heard it called that before. Okay. It's just like a box crate with an open top, and it's plastic, and it's got like holes all around it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's called an egg crate? All right. So he did that method for his tackle box, and then he just put his shelves and his little tackle containers in it, and then he put PVC pipes on the outside for his rod holders.
Yep.
And I mean, that seemed like a pretty cheap way to go too.
I have one of those setups for my smaller kayak.
Yeah.
They're when you want lightweight and you don't want to drag a bunch of stuff, they're great.
Yeah, sweet. So there's one option for you. But that made me want to ask about tackle organizers. You named a specific one that you have.
Yeah, the Yak Attack Black Pack. So, I mean, there's a bunch of different ones out there. I like this one. It ships flat, you assemble it, but the thing I like about it is it's incredibly, you can make it the way you want it.
Okay.
They give you all the pieces, say, hey, this is an example of how they go together. However you want to mount it, do it. So, like, it only comes with 6 rod holders. I have 10 on mine. Has a little anchor tie down points. It has hinges. It has latches. You can do one latch if you want. You can,
wow.
And then they have camera mounts that you can put on that. They have gear track accessories that you can mount to your black pack.
Wow.
I like the medium of it.
The versatility.
You can make it whatever you need it to be, and it's held up really well for me so far.
Good. So then with that though, it's behind you.
Yeah.
Do you ever have trouble getting into it?
Not really. I have trouble getting behind it because I bring way too much stuff with me most of the time. So I'll have a container of spinner baits or something sitting behind it, and that one can get a little hard to get to. But the reality of it is I'm in an extremely wide, extremely heavy kayak that has great stability, and I can stand up, turn around, and reach over.
Oh, nice.
So
one time speaking of stability, I saw this kayak that had arms that came out.
Yeah.
So it was like, it was the same plastic material of the kayak, and then you would release the front 2 clips, and then you could swing out these arms.
those outriggers.
Yeah, it was interesting. It seemed a little extra considering kayaks are so stable anyways, but you know.
I agree. It seems a little extra.
Yeah.
That would be a fair assessment in my mind.
Ones?
I've seen pictures. I haven't played with one.
Yeah, I've never obviously been out on one, but I saw one at Bass Pro Shops once. It was interesting. So you're talking about padding being important, and most kayaks would come with it, but have you ever seen anyone upgrade that or add padding from some sort of roll?
Talking like that EVA foam type.
Yeah.
I have seen people who have done full kits make their stuff real fancy. Yeah, absolutely. It's not something that's been important enough for me to dive into yet.
Sure.
But, if I end up getting a new kayak next year and, move everything over, I might
Sounds
explore
like
that.
a plan.
Yeah, it could happen.
Yeah. And then are there any kind of shade covers or anything that they make? How do you keep the sun off yourself when you're just sitting out there in the water,
Truthfully, any kind of shade cover is going to get in the way of the way I cast. I need to have kind of options because you don't really know where you're trying to sling something. You don't know what you're going to be up next to.
Yeah.
So truthfully, ball cap, sunglasses, and just as an example, because it's what I have, the PFG, the Columbia sunproof cover.
Yeah.
Those things are money.
And if you live anywhere near us, there's a Columbia outlet store in Woodburn, Columbia outlet store in Lincoln City. And they both have those discount stores that dude, you get some good stuff there.
Yeah. Those things are worth every penny you're going to pay for them if you spend long days on the water, especially if you're doing back-to-backs.
Yep. I'm pretty sure 80% of my clothes that I own are Columbia, and
good stuff,
a lot of them are the PFG.
Yeah.
It's great. I love it.
100% agree.
So then we already talked a little bit about anchors, but do most people just run a little mushroom type anchor?
You really don't need much with a kayak. I think mine is a little 6-pound ball, and that's it.
Just a ball? Okay.
Yeah.
And then you have your cool winch.
Yeah.
Dude, that would suck to be on a kayak and have all the rope and everything. The winch is probably a necessary thing, huh?
You can do it the other way, but like you said, it's a pain, and you don't have a place to store it, and then it gets tangled up in your feet, and then you have a crankbait snag your rope, and then it's just,
Which
it mushrooms.
happens in my boat every single time, Yeah, it's awful. Then what about electronics? As far as your, you got some electronics on there.
I don't have as much as a lot of people do, not even close, but I did upgrade my my graph this year. I got a Humminbird 7-inch with all the goodies. So it's that particular graph is known to have really, really good side scan, which is kind of one of my goals.
Oh yeah.
I'm not necessarily the guy that's going to be plotting and charting all over a map and dropping points, and I'm not the tournament guy. I don't go out and do that, but I want to be able to see what's on my sides.
Yeah.
So it has a side scan. I think it goes out 100 feet.
Wow.
And you can look at it and you can say, oh look, there's a tree. Oh look, there's an old truck. That's an old roadbed. I was out on Dorina Reservoir, and it was paddling through 25 foot, and all of a sudden it showed a little roadbed. Pitched a drop shot out to it. Bam, got one. And it's not that you see fish, it's that you see what they're holding, what they're holding to. You see
the habitat.
Yeah, you see
places,
the stuff that they're going to be looking for at that time of year. So that's the value to me. And then obviously the speed, the water temp is a huge thing.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, if I had to pick one thing to have my electronics tell me, it would be water temp. It just changes the game, knowing where the water's at.
Because that has such a huge effect on fish behavior.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And where they're going to be, and what they're going to be looking for. Yeah. How angry they're going to be,
Or hungry.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm going out and the water temp is 68 degrees, I'm going to have a completely different approach than if it's 42. Completely different bait choice.
Yeah.
So
what if it's 50 compared to 55? Is there even a difference in that?
Absolutely. At 55 is when smallmouth start to spawn. So all of a sudden I'm going to be looking for bedding fish.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if it's 50, I'm going to say, okay, they're probably going to be starting to look for that, you know, that place to spawn, depending on time of year, obviously. But, you know, that bit of information can change what you look for.
It's got temperature, side scan, depth, but you said that you don't really mark fish with it. Does it have the ability to do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I just don't have it set up with that as one of my primary screens.
Got it. Yeah. It's doing it. It just doesn't really matter so much.
Yeah.
But you power it with like a little battery, right? A little
12
deep cycle.
volt. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Where'd you get that from? Amazon or something?
I think the one I have now I got from Battery Exchange, just because I was on my way home.
They're honestly kind of hard to find. Like they sell them at outdoor, like, you know, Cabela's or Sportsman's. They sell them at Batteries Plus, but like it's kind of a specific battery. At least I found that when I was running lights on my boat.
Okay.
I had to look everywhere to find one that I had a lot of specific criteria though. I wanted a gel battery. Yeah. I wanted, you know, the right amps and deep cycle, all that stuff. Yeah.
So at this point, I actually run 2 batteries on my kayak.
Yeah, because you got one for your electronics and one for your motor.
Drive. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the one for the motor is a 24 volt, 100 amp hour lithium.
Wow.
Battery.
That's a serious battery.
Yeah, I ran it for 4 or 5 hours the other day, and it didn't even notice.
Wow. So do you know at full bore how many amps your motor's pulling?
I believe at full out it's between 460 and 500 watts.
Watt. Okay.
So at 24 volts, that's 16 amps ish.
All right. And at a 100 amp hour battery, and that's full blast. You're not sitting there in full blast ever.
No.
Yeah.
And truthfully, when you drop it down to, you know, instead of 4.5 miles an hour, you get down to 4 miles an hour.
Yeah.
You half your use. You half your wattage. So if you're not trying to sprint.
Yeah. Dude, that's great. That's awesome. So then you've got your electronics figured out. You run any kind of phone holder or anything?
And again, because I'm not generally
mapping,
doing all that, I have a Pelican waterproof case I keep my phone in.
Oh, okay.
That way, if it falls over, that thing's floating.
Yeah.
I can go get it, you know. I should probably have a tether if I was going to keep it on my person, but
if you're fishing at a pond too, it's a little different.
I usually just put it under my seat and forget about it.
That was one thing when I flipped my kayak deer hunting on a river, I lost my phone. It just got wet. I had enough phone to call my wife and tell her where to pick me up. Pick me up at this bridge.
That's nice.
And then it died. And she showed up with her Mazda. But anyway, what kind of tool organization tips do you give? It's not a boat. It's not like you need to have an emergency toolkit, but is there still any kind of like pliers or anything like that?
Yeah, so I've got a little kit that has a couple of a spare propeller, some Allens,
Sweet.
a couple screwdrivers, that sort of thing. But it really doesn't take that much. The other thing that you might want is a cable saver, you know, or something like that in case you snap a steering cable, something like that. But
is that if you were depending on your feet only? I noticed you have a spare oar.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Paddle.
Don't leave without a paddle.
Yeah, not an oar, but a paddle.
Yeah.
And your paddle has your tape measure on it.
It does have one on it. Yeah, I got one that has that. Yeah.
You use a separate one too?
So if you're doing anything like official, there's like a catch board, you know, is something you have to use. But
do they provide it, or do you provide your own?
You got to buy one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And it probably hooks onto your rail, doesn't it?
They make an attachment that it will. Yes, it's possible.
Anything you could ever want on your rails.
Pretty close.
But it's not like you're bringing a full toolkit or any kind of motor repair stuff.
Not generally, no.
It's not a gas motor. There's no point.
No.
Have you ever seen one with a gas motor?
You know, I've heard conversations. People are bringing it
weed
up
whacker,
just to be
two-stroke.
difficult, mostly.
Yeah.
You know, like
just to have more gas to mix. Yep.
Yeah.
How about your net? What do you do with your net?
So I I run like a steelhead net generally.
Okay.
And part of that is because I can get my fish, lay my net across the edge of the kayak, and that net's still in the water. The fish isn't stressed. I can take a second and orient myself, you know, put something away, set my rod down, get my pliers, get the scale, whatever I need to do. Yeah. And it's not that fish laying in the bottom of my kayak flopping around. You know, I want to be as nice to the fish as I can.
Because otherwise it's not really necessary. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, I love nets, especially when I'm using treble hook baits. Those things are just nasty. I try not to use them whenever I can.
It out of the mouth and everything.
But no, I have a little mounts on the gear track, and it's just a little double roller. The end of the net sits in that, and I lay it across the front of my kayak, across the storage hatch.
All right. And the material of it is like a rubbery material
Yeah.
rather than like something that gets tangled up in your hooks real bad.
Yeah, that, and also, I mean, fish have a protective slime coat.
Yeah.
You want to be as nice to that as you can, you know? So if you're using something that's a really abrasive, nasty rope synthetic thing,
Yep.
I mean, they're the cheap ones. You use what you got, but if you can,
Try to be nicer.
try to.
be,
you know?
be a little more gentle. Let them grow big.
Yeah.
I feel like the net would be one of the biggest obstacles that would honestly probably make you, if there's anything on your kayak that's going to make you feel claustrophobic, in my mind, and at least probably in my experience in a sit inside cheap kayak, it's always the net getting all in my face, getting in the way of stuff, don't know where to put it.
And they make some nifty nets out there.
Yeah.
They make something you can grab with your hand. It braces itself off the bottom of your forearm, and it folds, and you can flip it out, and it's slick, man.
Yeah, that's
it's
cool.
not cheap, but it's slick.
To help kind of solve that feeling.
Yeah, you take up less space. You can store it behind you, and then just when you need it, it's there.
And you mentioned clothing. You're running Columbia PFG.
Generally, yeah.
Yep. But which stands for Performance Fishing Gear for those who don't know. What about your shoes? Do you have kayaking shoes?
Depends on the time of year.
Yeah.
So I have a wet deck kayak, so water does come up through the scupper holes, and I'll stand in about an inch of water a lot of times, right? So when it's the day after Christmas and
that's cold,
it's freezing, I'm gonna wear wool socks, regular socks, and then a pair of waterproof boots. That's what I do.
Sure.
When it comes around summertime, I'm either wearing flip-flops or deck shoes, something that drains.
Yeah. Have you noticed that your feet get less cold when on the pedals? You have a motor now, but, pedaling all winter.
Yeah, I mean, if it's in the summer, really not an issue.
Yeah.
I think if your feet are in and on water, even if you have layers, it's going to pull heat out.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to have cold feet at some point if it's a long fishing day in the winter. It's just going to happen.
Because I know for me on my 30-degree kayak trips, my toes, because you're not using them, they're just sitting there. Circulation's not great. They're just, they go numb, But when I ride my bike in cold weather, get that blood's pumping, I don't even notice them, if they're cold or not. So I was wondering if you noticed that with the pedals in your kayak.
It probably helps. I'm going to be honest. I try and get where I'm going and then stop pedaling as much as I can.
So your feet are just kind of sitting there anyways. Yeah.
But one of the things that's nice about those big fishing kayaks, though, is I can stand up and stretch if I don't have good circulation.
Yeah, that's a game changer.
Move around a little bit. Oh, for long days, it's everything.
Yeah. I tried to stand in my kayak once and it didn't go well.
Yeah.
Luckily, it was a fun lake day. It wasn't like a fishing trip, but
yeah.
I saw this guy running a flag so he could keep track of the wind. A lot of guys do that.
It's actually not so much to keep track of the wind; it's to make you visible to boats.
Oh,
and
okay.
it is pretty well required. I'll run one anytime I'm anywhere.
Required in Oregon?
I think it's at least heavily advised. I'm not going to say I know exactly. I know
kind
if
of
you're
like how our hunter's orange laws are here. It's not required unless you're under a certain age.
But it's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
I know if you're doing any kind of tournament, you have to run one.
Okay.
And honestly, a lot of boaters really don't care about kayakers. They don't look for them. They don't mind if they throw them against the bank with a 4-foot wake. They don't care.
Yeah.
So you gotta same. You really just gotta pay attention, and that's a great way to do that. The one I have has a 360 light on top of it too, if it's kind of dusk. So you can.
Which battery does that hook up to?
It has its own. It's just
sweet.
a little screw in.
So there's no wires to mess with, or
nothing like that.
And then that.
I actually have a red and green light that's magnetic that I can stick on the front as well.
Yeah.
Because safety.
And then people might think you're a little boat when it's dark out, and they might treat you a little better.
Hey, who knows?
Yeah, a little more legit.
Fingers
I like
crossed.
It. So yeah, I was gonna ask if there's any kind of lighting system that people will run.
Oh, absolutely. There's guys that put little panels in the side of their kayak with switches that have deck lighting, white light, deck red light, red and green up front, white, 360 in the back. People do a lot of stuff with that.
Lights are one of those fun things where whether it's a boat or a car or a bike, lights are fun, dude. Wiring that up, putting them all, it's great.
Yeah, it gets a little nerve-wracking, though, when you're drilling a hole in your $3,000, $3,500 hull that you just bought, know, and there's no redos on that.
Yeah, it's not metal. Can't weld it.
Nope.
It's plastic. Oh, man, yeah, that's a whole other thing I didn't even think about. So what about your life jacket?
Yeah. So I have one of the inflatable ones. just because I don't like a lot of bulk. I'm thinking about getting something different just to try out. Again, with that phone tether idea, the one I have, there's really no place to store or secure. The one interesting thing is I do know those inflatable ones that either with the canister, the ripcord, or the little tube to inflate it.
Yeah.
Those don't count as a watercraft life jacket unless they're being worn.
Oh.
So you can't just put it in a hold somewhere and have it count like you could with a regular.
Yeah, with a regular life jacket.
It just has to be
I'll
close
sit
by.
on top of them a lot of time. Yeah.
So that's one funky thing with those, but you know what? I still like the inflatable ones.
Yeah.
They just stay out of the way so well. You can forget about them.
Yeah. I have one because I shoot with my life jacket on a lot for duck hunting, and it doesn't have the padding on the shoulder. So it's got the, you know, you imagine like a regular camouflage life jacket.
Front
it's
heavy.
got pockets all over it, but then the shoulders are just thin material, you know, fabric of some sort. And that's been pretty nice. I do wish it didn't have a low back on it, because for me in the kayaks, that's the problem, is having a low back. So if I were shopping for another kayak, jacket, I would definitely get one with a short.
Yeah.
I might even see if I can manipulate the one I have, but that might make it invalid.
Yeah, it definitely would. Definitely would. Yeah, they make them purpose built for those seats that they'll, you know, be like shoulder blades up padding, and that's
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Are there any other features of a kayak that you run that are good to mention?
One of the big ones I'll say for a heavy kayak is landing gear.
Okay.
And so that's something that you'll never guess, but it bolts to the track. And it basically has wheels on arms that pop out, you can put down, and it's a built-in cart. And then when you get to the water, you can loop them up and they sit on top of your hull, and they're just out of the way. Those are lifesavers for moving a heavy kayak.
Yeah.
Because I'm not picking my boat up.
No.
That's not happening.
Wow. How heavy is it?
I don't know. With the battery and the motor and stuff like that, that thing's over 200 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, easily. I mean, some of the big, you know, Hobie Pro Angler 14s fully kitted out, they're well over 300 pounds. You know they are.
Man.
So at that point, you're trailer launching. You know, you're not dragging.
Which it's kind of funny, because one of the arguments for a kayak over a boat is you don't need a trailer. But then at that point, it evolves into something that needs a trailer.
Yeah. Well,
my question is, if you're honest with yourself, at that point, does it ever evolve back into a boat?
So here's the beautiful thing about that overdeveloped kayak.
Yeah.
You can't fit two people on it. That's the solitude and the peace and the quiet. Okay. You know what I mean?
It's a different spirit behind it.
No, but that's exactly why I have 3 kayaks. I have one tiny one that I'll throw down some rocks to get down to a creek, and then one that's, you know, a little more substantial, but I can drag it a half mile if I need to, and then the big one that I'm not going to do that with.
And that's the one you had on the trip. Yeah. Sweet. So what kind of features are a waste of time or like a gimmick?
There's the age-old argument about front-facing sonar, the devil of fishing, you know.
Oh, okay.
And that personal choice, whatever. I think there's a lot of people that do like a preparation tray in front of them, or like a sunscreen going over the top. When I look at that, I'm just like,
limiting yourself.
Yeah, you're just making it harder on yourself. One of them I kind of hinted at to you is multiple pole holders up front. You know, you're taking away your ability to fight fish, to get your rod tipped down, to keep them in the water. You know, like you're limiting your capability, and you're not adding anything to your ability to work a fish. So I don't see the point in that.
So you keep an open bow minus your net.
Much as I can.
Yeah.
And that was actually one of the main reasons too that I didn't go with a front end electric motor. Because I didn't want to be casting around and fighting over it all the time.
Have you had fish wrap up in your pedal motor?
You know what? I thought I did on that trip.
Yeah, I remember that.
It didn't. It just buried in the grass. I haven't had it happen yet.
Haven't had it. Okay.
Nope.
All right.
Not yet.
Yeah. Nice. So basically, like anything that clutters up the front of your boat seems like a waste of time to you.
Without reason. Like obviously I've got my graph up there. You know, I've got that throttle now. There's things up there. But at the same time, you don't want to build a towering wall of gear in the area that you're supposed to be engaging the fish and you need that space.
Yeah. I kind of expect you to say like a sound system or something like that.
Oh, see, that's more in like the heresy. Yeah. You know, like you start pumping music on a kayak and I'll find you. You know? It's not okay.
Paddle splash.
Something like that. Maybe a little more aggressive.
Maybe more battleship style.
Yeah.
Casted lead weights.
Yeah. I'm going to get a 2-foot drill bit and just punch a hole or two.
Oh man. All right. So if you're the kind of person that blasts your music, get off the water for one, but also don't be anywhere near Kyle.
Yeah. That's some good advice.
All right. I like it. So just some more questions and tips. What kind of brands to look out for?
I'm going to start some fights here. Some of my favorites
it's
are
just sports
we're
culture.
talking kayak or like fishing gear.
Kayak.
So I run a Native. I said that already. Native Titan. I think they're great kayaks. Obviously, they're not the only kind of kayak out there. I've had great. Yak Attack is one of the brands that they make anything pretty much that you could ever want to run.
Okay.
And they make good quality stuff too. I haven't had any Yak Attack stuff that I've thought, wow, that's cheap. That didn't work like I thought it would. They're pretty squared away. Anchor Wizard for that little winch anchor.
Yeah.
Those things, again, worth their weight in gold.
And that's its own brand. They're not it's not a product.
Nope,
Nice.
It's an Anchor Wizard. I would say for the outboard motor, again, I'm running a Newport. There are other brands, Torqeedos out there. Some people just love their Torqeedo. The reason I went Newport instead of Torqeedo is if you buy a Torqeedo, you have to use their battery. It has a proprietary hookup, and there's no choice. I was able to source my own battery. Yeah. I can get my own capacity. I can get a smaller one for shorter trips if I want to,
lighter weight.
Yeah. So I appreciated that part of it.
Anytime you're not stuck with buying one brand's product, I'm like, that's the way to go. Yeah.
I'm with you.
Was it hard learning the technique of like getting in and out of the boat, casting, maneuvering, standing up? Like it's all just comes down to balance, right? But are there any kind of techniques that are important to know?
Part of it depends on the kayak, It's like if you're learning to stand on a kayak that's borderline standable, you're going to have a rough time. On my middle kayak you can stand on it, but you have to be a little bit careful. If you set the hook too hard, you might be swimming for a minute,
Oh, wow.
But it has a little strap in the front that's made so you can help pull yourself up to a standing position,
Oh.
So things like that. On my bigger kayak, it has that pedal drive that I can grab a hold of and pull myself up. So it's not just having to create inertia from nothing to get up.
Doing squats from sitting to every time.
Yeah, because that's just, it's doable.
Do you find yourself standing more than you're sitting? Because on our trip, you were sitting for almost the whole time, it seemed like.
So I prefer to stand.
Okay.
One of the reasons I was sitting there is because I was in relatively clear, relatively shallow water, and I was fishing a grass edge.
Yeah.
And I'm a lot more visible.
Got it.
If I'm standing.
So you're considering that over comfort. You're considering.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There I was. Yeah. But then also at times I would get up to a point and I would start seeing the depths I was looking for, and I would stand up to see if I could see where that grass line was going so that I could cast along it.
Yeah.
So there's give and take on both.
Sure.
You think about the force perspective, seeing through the water break for the fish, they're able to see a lot up there. If you stand up, you're visible, especially if there's a low sun and there's shadow. Yeah. That's can be the difference between a 20-foot shadow and an 80-foot shadow. You know what I mean? Like,
wow.
So it's just all the stuff to think about.
Mm-hmm. On the note of launch and getting in and out, like on my kayaks, I love that I can launch literally anywhere, the shallowest of water. I can drag it on the bottom. But you've got a bunch of stuff hanging off the bottom of your boat.
I do.
So how does that affect where you can launch? Are you pretty stuck with like boat launches?
It's easier on boat launches for sure. I can launch a lot of different places. They don't have to be boat launches. Rocky stuff is worrisome, partially because I gotta have those wheels that are supporting however much weight over that material.
Yep.
And then I've got a rudder and a transducer that are hanging under that kayak that will catch stuff. So yeah, you definitely have to think about it. I have broken off a transducer under that kayak before. It was not fun, and then it got caught in my propeller, and it was a bad day.
Yeah. Have you figured out a technique? Like, do you hop in the boat when it's sideways to the bank as opposed to nose out or nose in?
Usually I will, yeah. And the nice thing is that boat's big and solid enough that it can be fully floating, and I can step in with one foot and step over, and it's not going to trip
nice.
over. You know? So again, the size of it counters with stability.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, that makes, because I was having a hard time imagining how you would launch from anywhere with a bunch of stuff hanging off the bottom of your kayak,
Yeah.
As opposed to like, obviously a boat launch, boat dock, Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But, you got to be careful with that stuff under there, right?
For sure. Yeah.
Are you also worried about bottoming out?
Less so. I mean, yeah, you want to pay attention to it. A keel guard is probably not a bad idea. I haven't put one on mine yet, but I should. I'm more worried about hitting my drive on something.
Yeah.
Than hitting something with the bottom of the boat.
That's part of what I was thinking too, is like a gravel bar or something could be troublesome, or even just getting you stuck on it.
Honestly, tree branches scare me more.
Really?
And the reason is there's a protective fin going down the length of the propeller blade.
Kind of like a keel.
Yeah. So it's going to hit first if it's the bottom coming up.
Yeah.
If it's something sticking out sideways, all bets are off.
Sure. Yeah. That makes sense. I could see that. And then you're worried about that even damaging it potentially.
That's why I carry a spare propeller.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Good thought there. Was there a big learning curve on casting?
You learn to kind of set your limits to know, maybe don't whip on the end as much, slow swing, you set your brakes according to your weight, and you figure out how things go. And man, I love casting on a bait caster more than a spinning rod at this point.
So another big thing to consider is kayak transportation. We already touched on the wheels that you have on yours, or a cart that they make carts, but then in your car, you drive a Honda Element. I do. And
I love it.
I noticed your kayak was not on top of it.
No.
Your kayak is inside of it.
Yeah.
That's easier for you, obviously, because it's way too heavy to put it on top. Mine are cheap on top hollow kayaks. That's easy. Or throw it in the back of the truck. Easy. Yeah. But I think one thing that might stop people is they think, I don't have a truck. I can't take my kayak anywhere. But you figured it out in a Honda Element.
Oh, yeah.
Do you
absolutely.
have to put the seats down? How does that work?
Well, so that's a great car because it has a little tailgate on it. The back seats are completely removable, kind of rubberized flooring. And I'll go one of two ways. I'll either put the passenger seat reclined all the way back and put the nose of the kayak up on it.
Oh, okay.
Or I'll just push it all the way forward, put the nose of the kayak into the back of the seat, and then ratchet strap it in.
Oh, okay.
And honestly, either way works. It kind of depends on how much gear I have in it if I want to lift it up that extra little bit,
So then if you had it all the way in with the seat back, then you can close the tailgate. But then if the seat's forward and you can't get the kayak all the way in, the tailgate's still open?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
But regardless, the top hatch is not closing.
You take all your poles off of it. Do you take your box and your seat and all that off of it, or does it fit in there with that stuff still on?
I leave it all on.
Okay.
Leave all of it on.
Which is really handy. That's what I would want to do.
Yeah.
So it's just the poles come off.
The poles come off. They go in their rod sleeves, and I put them in a rod mule to protect them,
Yeah. Something that I should have done years ago, but never have.
I'll tell you, that rod mule is something I use more than I ever thought I would.
Really?
And that's just that sleeve on top with a little binder and then a shoulder strap and a clip around the bottom of the rods, and it can take 10 rods, put them into one bundle, and you can sling it over your shoulder.
Yeah.
And it just makes it so you're not going to slam one rod in the door. It's...
Where do you just throw it in the car?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I put it on top of the kayak after I load the kayak.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. Sweet. I mean, that's pretty slick. I think that's one thing that does stop some people is they're worried about that transportation aspect.
Yeah.
But to be able to put it in your car, that's awesome. But then
you
the
just
big
can't
ones,
bring people along, that's fine.
But that's your whole point about the single seater. But then you brought up that some of them are so big you require a trailer.
Yeah, some people that have super kitted out, there's people that have a 3-horse electric motor with dual batteries running it, and then they're just a 14-foot fishing kayak.
That's a boat, dude. That's a boat. What? It's a one-person boat.
Here's what I will say about that, because I understand the argument, and there's a lot of people that really love to make it a lot. The dynamic is different in a boat than a kayak, regardless of how fancy it is. The dynamic is different. And I don't know that I can fully explain it. It's something about being that close to the water.
Yeah.
You can tip both of your hands in the water at the same time on either side of it. You're closer. You're in it more. At least for me.
Sure.
That's my thought.
On that, kayaks are a low maintenance option.
Yeah.
Compared to a boat. If we want to compare watercraft here, I mean, you can't really get much more utility over maintenance. The positives there on a kayak definitely are strong.
The Tupperware boat is unbeatable.
And then here in Oregon, we need the invasive species permit.
We do.
But there's no registration or anything like that other than the permit, right?
If you put a motor on it, there is.
Did you have to register yours with an electric motor? I didn't know you had to with an electric motor.
Yes, you do.
Okay.
Yes, you do.
So that changed. You now have a whole number.
Yes.
Wow.
Yep. And I have to get tags for it, pay $145 registration.
I
Yeah.
had no idea that was the difference.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
As soon as you put an electric motor on that thing, it
Becomes
a
a
boat.
powered watercraft.
So, but that means you won't need to buy the invasive species permit separate because it's a part of the boat registration.
Well, I have 3 kayaks. I'm going to buy it anyways.
Yeah, that's true.
Like
because it's not per boat, it's per person, right?
I can just take it with me. Yeah.
Except I forgot they changed the name of it. It's not the invasive species permit. It's the waterway access permit.
Yeah.
And we just checked right before that 10 foot is still the limit. So if you have, like me, a 9 foot, 10-inch kayak, I'm kind of pushing it. But
bring your own tape measure. Don't trust theirs.
Yeah.
But.
Well, that's the thing. I'm ready. If someone wants to check me, I'm gonna say, all right, let's measure it. I'm under the limit. But I was a little worried because you told me that they changed it, and I was like, oh no.
Yeah, I thought they did, but apparently I was mistaken.
Well, they changed the name of it, so
they did.
They could change it any time. They do that kind of stuff. But if you have no motor, all you need is the waterway access permit if you're over 10 feet.
Yep.
But if you have a motor, you need to register it with the Marine Board.
Correct.
Wow.
And the nice thing about the waterway access permit too is they will sell it to you for 2-year stretches, which I think is kind of nice.
Yeah. What's around the minimum someone could spend to get a decent start?
I think especially if you look secondhand, you can get a decent, and I'm going to call decent like sit on top, purpose for fishing, because that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, has tracks.
Yeah, tracks are important. You can get a pretty decent one of those used probably on Marketplace or something like that for $500-$700.
Okay.
Really,
that's fairly achievable.
That's not that bad. You can get, I think you can even get a brand new, again, not like top of the line or anything like that.
Sure.
But a new sit on top with purpose built for $850, something like that. So.
And that's with no accessories.
Nope. That's just
with
the
boat,
a seat.
Yep.
An elevated seat, bungees, tracks, all that good stuff.
Okay.
And a couple of rod holders in the back, probably.
So going used seems like a great way to go. Unless you have to use your credit card, then you got to go to...
Don't do that. Just don't do that. Don't trust people.
Yeah. So then where's the best place to get this stuff if you're not buying used?
I would say if you want one of the nice kayaks, and honestly, I'm going to say Next Adventure Paddle Sports up in Portland. Again, the guy, Marvin, that helped me out with some of my gearing issues, I asked him for advice. These guys got me a new drive when I sheared my drive off on a 4-day fishing trip. They're great guys. And if you go to them, you can actually test different kayaks.
Really?
They have testing days because if you're buying a nice kayak.
Are they on the water?
They are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
And they have a couple different facilities, but their primary kayak place is on the water.
Yeah, if you're spending the money, you want to know what you're getting.
Yeah, absolutely. Try it first. Make sure it fits you. Make sure it fits your style. But those guys are fantastic.
Cool.
So I would say that.
Yeah. Next Adventure in Portland.
Yeah.
All right, sweet. Because, you're not going to find anything like this at Walmart.
No, you're not. And if you go full crazy right out the bat, you're going to be spending $6,000 on a rigged out kayak, $7,000 on a rigged out kayak.
Okay, so that's the bougie option.
Yeah, that's the bougie option. You can go higher than that too. But, if you want a tournament ready, you have your graph, you have your motor, you have your landing gear, you have...
the graph is a chunk of that. Those things, I've been shopping for a while for one, and even used crappy one that'll just tell you the depth and the whatever. Because that's all that I want to know is water depth to keep my motor out of the gravel, because I keep eating gravel with my boat. And it's like, dude, even a used depth finder, they're expensive. Yeah,
I got one I just pulled off my kayak.
Oh yeah? Is it going to be for sale soon?
I might.
Okay.
Maybe. I was going to put it on my little kayak, but I don't really need it.
We can talk offline.
All right. Sounds good. Sounds good.
So, I like it. Any more final tips about kayaking?
And it's just so much more peaceful. Again, I know I kind of said this before, but you have a different sense of being a part of the ecosystem on a kayak than you do on a boat. On a boat, you're adventuring through someone else's territory. On a kayak, you're in the middle of it. It's the difference between riding in a truck and riding in a motorcycle. Yeah. You're more a part of everything around you. And to me, I think that's the reason that I love it so much. Yeah. You can make it as complicated as you want to, but in its essence, it's simple. You get out and you push yourself around on the water.
I could totally see that, and like I said, I have a boat, and I spend a lot of time on my kayak, and definitely that's a great way to put it. You know, being through the ecosystem versus in the ecosystem.
Yeah.
That really is so true. You know, one time I was staying at the All Sea with some friends, and me and another guy decided to ride our kayaks out in the dark at night, and it was cool because it was like a full moon and the water was all steamy, and we just went out there in the fog and we're just quietly glass water, and then all of a sudden, bang! Beaver tails. They were hanging out there. They just started slapping the water next to us all around.
And you probably almost fell out your kayak, didn't you?
It was so peaceful and nice, and then bang, beaver tail. You know, they're slapping the water, and so it was, but anyway, you know, you get to experience stuff like that. It's different on a boat. Really is different. So
yeah, it is.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate all of that insight about. I mean, there's so many people that want to get into kayaking and kayak fishing, and I mean, I feel like that was a 101 course on, you know, if you didn't know anything about it before, you could answer a quiz now about it and do pretty good.
and the reality of it too is, don't buy a bunch of stuff before you try it. Like, get out on the water and see what is out there that would actually make your experience better.
Yeah.
Don't just buy a bunch of gear because someone says, hey, if you want to be serious, you need this gear.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Be on the water. Say, okay, I need a bigger net. I need to go look for a bigger net. You know, okay, this graph has this. I would really benefit from that. But if you don't miss it, you don't need it.
Yeah.
You know?
Sure.
I've gone a little crazy on mine, granted.
Because you can.
Because I can.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Yeah.
but don't think you need all this fancy stuff. There's guys that have great times that pull fish all the time, and they're bare bones.
Yeah.
And that's great.
I love that. And that's kind of what I live by too. You know, the biggest mistake that every new hunter makes is they go buy a full Sitka outfit. They buy a $5,000 rifle and a $3,000 scope, and then they buy the sports pack. And that's
and it
what
looks
they do
really
every
good
year.
and they're safe.
But so it's very true. Well, Kyle, the main reason for this show and the way that we always want to end out these conversations is by asking the big questions about our spiritual connection to the life in the outdoors.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to ask you is, what drives your connection to the outdoor lifestyle, and what do you understand spiritually about your place in the world?
I think just kind of right off the bat, the world is noisy these days. You know, there's so much going around. Everything's vying for your attention. Everything's trying to tell you what to think about things, you can't get away from it in your normal day-to-day life.
Yeah.
So my quiet time on the water is peace. You know, it's centering. It's that time where you could actually kind of distance yourself from all of that noise, be still and just listen.
Yeah.
And listen to what God has, what he's saying, what he wants to communicate, even just finding peace. I mean, how many times in the Gospels did Jesus go away to a desolate place by himself to be recharged? You know, that's absolutely scriptural.
Yeah.
I know that, you know, we all have busy lives, and sometimes you feel like you need to just detach and let go and relax. And, you know, so often that's I'll turn on a movie and just let my brain fry, you know, whatever it is. But I can honestly say, like, yeah, I still do that for sure. But I feel so much more centered, and I feel the pleasure of God more when I'm out by water, when I'm out there away from it all.
Yeah.
I've had days where I go out and I get on the water, I put in my earbuds, and I'll listen to a gospel.
Oh yeah.
Beginning to end.
Yeah.
You know, just go through the story. If I'm preparing something, I'll go out there and I'll listen to 3 sermons over the same subject matter and just immerse myself in the subject matter. And there's something about, even if you're putting that stuff in your ears, you know, you're out in this peaceful place. You're seeing the creation that God made interact with itself and with you, you know, and it's just, you know, you see the herons, you see osprey coming down and catching the fish that you can't catch. And you know, all of these little things where beavers, you know, it's just, it's different than sitting in your living room looking at a computer screen.
Absolutely. You know, I think that's one reason why the outdoors lifestyle is so spiritual, is because of that discipline of silence, that you really don't experience in other places, because exactly like what you're saying, everything's vying for our attention. Our method of silence and being quiet is often turning on the TV. But that's not real. It's pseudo peace. It's not real peace. And
it's white noise. It's not quiet.
Yeah. But when we're out there in the silence in nature, that's when we are truly disconnected from the stimulating things of entertainment, TV, but even our daily lives and how distracting and busy they can become. Work, right? The number one stressor for most people is their job. And to be able to have the opportunity to be silent and listen. And I truly believe that's why there's so many people who aren't Christians, but they have this outdoor lifestyle, this outdoor experience, and they just realize there is something bigger than us out there. There is some sort of a spiritual reality. I sense it when I'm quiet, when all the distractions are gone and I'm out there alone. That's when God, at least the idea of God, becomes tangible, right? And you're talking about peace, and it reminded me of Philippians 4:7 that says, "And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ." So, I mean, that's one thing that I always pray for and long for and pray for others, is this peace that doesn't make sense, peace that goes beyond understanding. As much as we try to seek peace in other areas, you really can't experience true peace apart from God.
Yeah. And this is complete rabbit trail, but I'm going. The cool thing about that passage too is we don't think of peace as something that's protective. But you look at that verse and it says the peace of God will protect your hearts and your minds.
Yeah.
You don't need to protect something that's not under attack.
Yeah.
And if we're honest, there is a war for what we think, who we are, that internal heart space. Everything is trying to get their hands on it or damage it.
And change it.
Yeah. And when you're out there in the quiet, everything that you can drown out otherwise, it's in the forefront, it's in the surface. And you have that chance to let that peace soak into those areas that everything is trying to rip apart. And there's a war for it.
All of us will, if we're not already, experience hardships and trials and go through hard things, and we'll face difficulties.
It's the only guarantee in life.
So it makes me wonder, okay, if we go through that, then what's the difference? It's our reaction to it, that whether or not we can survive the storm. That, to me, that would make sense then on what you're saying. This is like a new idea to me, that peace would protect us as well. If our reaction to a trial is the thing that can cause it to be destructive, right? And we self-destruct ourselves because of panic, anxiety, rash decisions, anger, frustration, right? But then peace is the antidote to all those things. And if peace only comes from God, that's a major reason why, like we always say, we can only get through things because of God, right? We can only get through trials or hardships with God. But there's a reason why that is. And a big part of that, not the whole part of that, but a big part of that is, I think what you're saying there is that peace protects us in those times. And we experience peace, and so many of us long for peace and silence and solitude, and we get to experience that in the outdoors. But it's only through God that we experience real peace. I
know we're supposed to carry that peace with us through our lives, right? It's not just like, okay, I'm going to dose up here and then I'm good for a while.
Yeah.
And again, going back to the example of Jesus, going out away from people into, the deserted areas, into the deserted places, and having those spiritual times, that was a regular thing for him.
Yeah.
And I mean, that man went through trials.
Yeah.
And he faced them with peace, and I don't think you can separate those. Now, granted, he had some other, God things going on, but I mean, at the same time, we're to strive to be like him, right?
Yeah.
He had this habit of going out, of going away from people, of seeking God and just listening.
Yeah.
We can do that. We can absolutely do that.
Yeah. Yeah. If Jesus, a couple thousand years ago when he walked the earth, if that all took place in the Pacific Northwest, instead of saying he went to the desert, would have said he went to the woods.
I mean, even think about this. Of the disciples, how many were fishermen? Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, what more do we need to,
Yep.
I mean,
We're the chosen class.
we're his favorite kind of people.
That's awesome. Man, I love that. I really hope that someone finds encouragement from that. And, if you're someone out there who needs peace and you feel like that's something that's missing in your life, or maybe you're facing trials and you think it's not possible for me to have peace. Well, God promises peace that goes beyond understanding. That means peace that doesn't make sense. We can have peace when we shouldn't have peace. And so I would invite you to explore that, whatever that might look like for you. Maybe you try reading the Bible. Maybe you try praying. Maybe you get connected with the church. There's so many options and avenues for wherever you are. But that's our encouragement today, is that you would try to tap into that peace that only comes from God.
Yeah. And I mean, in that same vein, getting out away from stuff and have an honest conversation with God. You're not looking for polished.
Yeah.
You don't
got to clean yourself up first.
Be real.
Yeah.
If you're confused, if you're hurt, say you're confused, you're hurt. Mm-hmm. What am I doing here? Yeah. You can't do that with a bunch of people around. I'm not willing to voice that stuff with a bunch of people around, but if I'm out by myself on the water, just me and God, that stuff gets voiced.
Yeah.
And then I get answers.
Yeah. Kyle, thank you for your heart. Thank you for giving your time even to be here and talk to us. And I'm excited to go get some fish caught with you.
Ben, you gave me the opportunity to just talk for a long time about kayaking and fishing. All right. Other people try and get me to stop talking whenever I start going on this stuff. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for letting me come here.
Yeah. Hey, appreciate it. And we'll catch you around. Thanks for listening.
I'm a people person, man.
Okay.
No,
you're not.
I know I'm not. But
You just said you like fish better than people.
Yeah.
And you like kayaking because you to be alone.